I kicked out my husband and his manipulative friend after he let her move into our house and even wanted to share a bedroom with her. I'm 28, my husband is 30. We've been married for 4 years, having tied the knot after 3 years of dating. Overall, our relationship was fine except for one major issue, his deep connection with his best friend. He always called her his best friend, and she's been his neighbor since childhood. They were inseparable from a very young age. Let's call her Fiona. Fiona and my husband went to the same kindergarten, attended the same primary, middle, and high school, and even enrolled in the same college, though they studied in different departments. They were attached at the hip, and it was impossible for me to forget it because they constantly brought up memories from their past at every opportunity. They only drifted apart once they started working. That's when I met my husband. Fiona once told me, rather casually, that I was the third most important woman in my husband's life. First was his mother, second was her, and then came me. She said it jokingly, but I have no doubt she truly believed it. Honestly, I always felt she disliked me and saw me as a rival. When my husband first introduced me to her, he presented her as his older friend, and I tried to be polite. But almost immediately, she mocked my makeup, claiming I didn't need to impress her. It happened repeatedly. She constantly made cutting remarks about my makeup, clothing, and so on. Sometimes her compliments left me feeling insecure. Once, she bluntly told me that my husband had a thing for dumb blondes and I was a blonde. I'm sure you get the picture. I tried talking to my husband about it several times before we got married, expressing my uneasy feelings about Fiona. But he brushed me off, saying I'd get used to her over time. He insisted that she wasn't liked by everyone because she never filtered her words and was too blunt for most women. Looking back, the fact that he belittled others to make her look good should have set off alarm bells. But at the time, it seemed trivial compared to the chance to be with him. He was perfect in every other way, intelligent, funny, charming. I was willing to tolerate Fiona because I loved him deeply, and he constantly reassured me that he loved me. So I let it slide. Over time, I stopped paying attention to Fiona and refused to let her get under my skin. Things improved even more when she got a boyfriend. She no longer picked on me without reason. 4 years ago, Fiona met Eddie through a dating app, and within a year, they were engaged. Saying she was head over heels in love doesn't even begin to cover it, and it seemed he was just as smitten. Despite their obvious attachment, I still believed that a year wasn't enough to truly know someone. They hadn't lived together long enough to consider marriage seriously. Fiona and I weren't friends, and I knew if I said anything, she would throw a fit, so I stayed silent. I confided in my husband, hoping he would gently guide her toward a rational decision, but he only gushed about how wonderful it was that he and Fiona got engaged around the same time as us, even hinting they might have a joint wedding. They actually discussed having a combined ceremony, but I stopped it early, pointing out that Fiona and I had too many fundamental differences. Thankfully, she didn't push it. Fiona married Eddie about a month after our wedding, and everything was fine until recently, 5 months ago, Fiona confided in my husband that she was having trouble conceiving. They planned to get medical evaluations after trying unsuccessfully for nearly 6 months. Unfortunately, it turned out Fiona was infertile. From that point, their marriage began to unravel. Even therapy with a family psychologist didn't help, because Eddie went ahead and filed for divorce. He didn't want to be with a woman who couldn't have children, unwilling to spend his life in a childless marriage. Honestly, I felt some sympathy for Fiona. She started visiting us much more often than before, and I tolerated it because I understood how difficult things were for her, and apparently, my husband was her only true friend. I couldn't get upset about her frequent visits, especially since she would just cry every time, and my husband would try to console her. It was almost impossible to be angry at someone already enduring such emotional pain, especially knowing she truly loved Eddie. Then came the divorce proceedings and property negotiations. They had to see each other often, which made things even harder for her. She began spiraling into complete despair. That's when my husband asked if she could stay with us for a while, claiming it would help her feel normal again being near him. This was about 2 weeks ago. As soon as I let her into my home, I immediately regretted it. She criticized literally everything I did, and it always seemed to slide off her back. She was depressed, unhappy with the food, our home decor, even my choice of TV shows. Ultimately, we had to follow her rules because according to my husband, that's what she needed right now. I told him multiple times that Fiona needed to leave, that if she disliked everything, she should return to her parents. But he begged me to let her stay, worried she might do something foolish if we threw her out in such a fragile state. I stayed silent, unwilling to take responsibility if something happened. 2 days ago, however, I finally had to kick them both out because they crossed all boundaries. When I came home from work, I saw my husband had moved some of his belongings from our bedroom into the guest room where Fiona was staying. He had even come home early to organize everything. When I walked in, they were still moving his things into the room. I was in shock and asked my husband if we could talk privately, but he said we could talk right in front of Fiona. Honestly, for the first time in weeks, she looked happy. I asked why he was moving into the guest room, and he calmly replied that he would now be living in the same room with Fiona. I just froze for a few seconds when I asked, "What the hell is going on?" He said that Fiona had been having panic attacks for several days and needed someone to comfort her at night when she woke up in a panic over the divorce. I immediately told him that was out of the question and that he must be insane if he thought I would accept this. But once again, he used his favorite excuse about Fiona. She's like a sister to him, and I had nothing to worry about. Both of them stood there, smiling at me, as if that smile could make the whole situation normal and acceptable. I was so angry and disappointed that I wanted to hit them both. But instead, my rage reached a point where I decided to act differently. I smiled at them in return and said that I completely understood and that everything was absolutely fine with me. My husband even dared to say he was sure I would understand, and they continued arranging the room. Meanwhile, I went back to our bedroom and retrieved the house documents. My father had given me this house when I started my first job, and it was legally in my name only, so the house legally belonged to me. When I found the papers, I returned to the guest room and politely asked if they had finished unpacking. When they said yes, I told them it was time to pack again because very soon they would be outside, free to play happy family as much as they liked. My husband couldn't understand what was happening for a few seconds until I showed him the documents and told him that the house was mine and that I would no longer tolerate this in my own home or allow them to humiliate me. He tried to joke, thinking I was kidding, but when he realized I wasn't laughing, he said I was being absurd and couldn't just kick them out. I told him I could, and I was doing it so arguing was pointless. I said I was disgusted by him, and even more by Fiona, because she now represented a strange mix of a drama queen and a whiner, which drove me crazy. Fiona, of course, burst into tears again, and my husband defended her, accusing me of always being jealous because of my insecurities. I didn't deny it because it was true. I really am that way. But the cause wasn't me, it was their twisted relationship. I told them that if they couldn't live without each other, they shouldn't try to build relationships with anyone else and ruin their lives the way they ruined mine. A heated argument followed, but in the end, they left. My husband said he felt insulted because he loved me and that still wasn't enough for me. Fiona kept crying, accusing me one last time of jealousy and cruelty. I didn't respond. I had no energy left to argue with them. I just wanted them gone. I thought all my problems would end once they left, but I was wrong. As soon as I kicked them out, our mutual friends, the ones who never cared about our marriage before, started messaging me, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill. In their view, my husband only wanted to support Fiona because panic attacks are serious, and instead of showing empathy, I turned it into drama and made it about my own insecurities. I immediately realized he had probably orchestrated this because all the messages were almost identical. I tried to ignore them, then he involved his family. Everyone insisted I was awful for kicking them out while Fiona was going through such a difficult time. They said I had no heart and didn't deserve a husband like him. From the start, it was clear he wasn't the right match for me. Deep down, I always knew it, which is why I felt threatened by Fiona. I realized arguing with them was pointless, so I blocked everyone for my own peace of mind. No one tried to understand my feelings. They didn't care, they only cared about my husband and Fiona and their own feelings. I thought blocking them would solve the problem, and I was already planning to file for divorce. But my husband reached out again from a different number, saying he was still willing to come back if I apologized. In that message, he repeated that he had always considered Fiona a sister, not someone he had romantic feelings for. So, I must have misunderstood everything. He said he cared for her and even loved her, but it was a platonic, brotherly love, not the kind he felt for me. He said the thought of living without me was unbearable, that leaving had been a mistake. But he also felt I overreacted and misunderstood everything. He asked me to think calmly, weigh the consequences, and not make a foolish decision I'd regret for life. He said he was willing to restore our relationship if we both apologized for the misunderstanding. I honestly don't know how to respond because I feel like I didn't overreact. And now, I'm not even sure if divorcing him is the right decision, especially since he keeps insisting Fiona is like a sister to him. Honestly, his message threw me off completely, and I'm not sure if I should follow through. I really feel like I did the right thing by kicking him out after he said he wanted to sleep in the same room as his childhood friend to comfort her during nighttime panic attacks. Before we continue to the update, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Personally, I think the author did the right thing. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship her husband has with this friend. Romantic or platonic, it's all inappropriate. Even a sibling-like bond of this intensity is unhealthy. It reminds me of the movie The Dreamers 2003, where a young man befriends a brother and sister with extremely strange boundaries. They weren't sleeping together, yet their relationship went far beyond what's normal for siblings. They were stuck in some kind of childhood period, even though they were already fully grown adults. And it all ended with the main character simply not being able to take it anymore and leaving because these people started doing complete nonsense, putting their lives in danger. Not just minor danger, but real, life-threatening danger. So yes, absolutely. The author should leave a husband like that if he allows himself such behavior. Now, let's continue. Update 1. Well, it seems I was truly blind. The comments on my first post opened my eyes because I realized I had simply let my guard down. And now my marriage is ruined. I should have stopped his friendship with Fiona from the very beginning. Even if it meant we would have broken up back then, it would have been worth it, because at least I wouldn't be getting a divorce now because of her. I just don't understand how I let things get so far between them. Maybe I just loved him too much. Maybe I still do. That's why I seriously considered forgiveness and the idea of getting back together. In my defense, he is good with words and had spent years convincing me that his friendship with Fiona was completely normal, and that my insecurities were my own problem. He constantly gaslighted me, insisting I was wrong. It was years of manipulation, and in the end, he pushed me to the breaking point by wanting to sleep in the same room with her. That was the final straw. My parents support me and believe I did the right thing filing for divorce. After something like that, restoring the marriage is impossible. He can't just take back his words, and I don't think he will break off his relationship with Fiona for me. A few days have passed, and I still haven't responded to him. I don't even know where they are now, and honestly, I don't want to, because I wouldn't like any of the possibilities. I deserve someone who puts me first, and my husband never did. I was a complete fool. I hope one day he will put me above Fiona, but now I understand that will never happen, and it's better for us to separate. I filed for divorce and hope the papers will be served to him soon. Thank you again to everyone who commented and helped me realize how foolish I was. I really needed to hear that. Update 2. My husband was served the papers a week ago, and he decided not to contest the divorce. It seems that if he's not going to fight for the marriage in court, there should be nothing more to discuss, but he came to me yesterday evening to say how disappointed he was that I was leaving him over such a small matter. I didn't expect him at all, especially after humiliating him and kicking them both out. But he said he needed to collect some belongings, so I let him in. When he finished, he sat across from me on the couch and said he wanted to talk. I stayed silent, waiting for him to speak. He said he wouldn't contest the divorce if I insisted, but he wanted me to know that, in his opinion, I was making a mistake. He claimed he had always loved only me, and it hurt him that I even thought he could betray me. Regarding Fiona, he said she and he were now living at his parents' house, and the whole family was upset by my decision to leave over such nonsense. After being served, my mother-in-law allegedly wanted to talk to me herself, but he stopped her out of respect for my choice, not wanting to pressure me through family. I found this slightly hypocritical, considering that this man orchestrated messages from all our mutual friends, begging me to take him back and calling me heartless after I kicked them out. I reminded him of it, and he clearly got nervous. He denied involvement, claiming everyone wrote of their own free will, but I'm no fool. I showed him the messages from our friends, they were identical. It was obvious someone gave them instructions on what to say, and they just copied the text. His denials changed nothing. He tried to steer the conversation elsewhere and complained about how hard the last few days had been, realizing our marriage was ending. He began crying on the couch, saying life would never be the same without me. And he kept thinking about how it could be fixed. It was already fairly fake, but the tears were too much. I felt no sympathy, and the first thing that came to mind was maybe I would reconsider the divorce if he promised never to see Fiona again. That truly shocked him. He almost immediately stopped crying, and we sat in silence, waiting to see who would speak first. For the record, I had no intention of staying with him, regardless of his answer. Even if he said he would end things with Fiona, I still would have left. Of course, he didn't say that. Instead, he argued that I was unfair, repeating the same lines I had heard in every argument about their friendship, that Fiona was his oldest friend, like a sister, and he couldn't abandon her, especially now during her hardships. But leaving me, his wife, to whom he had made vows, that was somehow normal. I was tired of listening to his excuses for why he had to maintain his friendship with Fiona, so I interrupted him. I told him that's exactly why I was leaving. Even when he had a choice between staying with me or keeping Fiona in his life, he chose her. So now he can't complain that I didn't give him a chance or that I overreacted. I was right in everything. And he had nothing to say. He simply stood up and left. Now, all that remains is to wait for the official procedures to begin. Update 3. A few weeks have passed since the last update, and today we met in court for the first time. According to the laws of our state, we have to wait at least 6 months before the divorce can be finalized. After the hearing, my husband approached me and said he was willing to wait all 6 months if it would help me come back to him. I was completely shocked that he was still trying to win me back, even though we hadn't seen or spoken to each other for weeks. I thought there was nothing left to talk about now that we were at the point of divorce, but he spoke and tried to make contact. I asked if he was still living with Fiona, and he couldn't answer. We just stood there in silence. I rolled my eyes and was about to get in the car when he said Fiona couldn't go back to her parents because her mother is unbearable and blames Fiona for the divorce, supposedly because she is responsible for not being able to have children. That's why she first moved in with us and then with his parents. I knew I probably should have felt sorry for her, but honestly, it was hard to feel compassion for someone who always made me feel worthless and ultimately caused my divorce. I told my husband, already sitting in the car, that Fiona had plenty of other friends, including some single people who would gladly take her in. He just refuses to admit that there's something wrong with their friendship. It's because of her that we're divorcing, but he still refuses to face the obvious truth that letting her move in with us was completely unnecessary. We argued again, and it only confirmed how foolish I had been all this time. I can't believe I even considered giving our marriage another chance. These relationships cost me too much friends, nerves, and a ton of money. Fiona lived with us for free, and now I even have to pay a lawyer. It's insane. I forgave so much just because I loved my husband, and he didn't even love me enough to admit that letting Fiona move in was a mistake. He's absurdly stubborn when it comes to her. I think it's good that we're divorcing. Now he can finally be with the woman he truly loves and stop wasting my time. I really hope he finally understands this and stops chasing after me. Update 4. Something absolutely crazy happened. I still can't believe my husband said such terrible things about Fiona. We saw each other just a few days ago, and I didn't expect him to show up again so soon, but yesterday he came to finally admit that he was wrong and that I was right about everything. He apologized and admitted his mistakes. Honestly, I didn't think I'd ever hear that. I still can't believe he finally realized how wrong he was and that Fiona was always against me. I got home from work and was calmly going about my day when he suddenly started banging on the door. When I opened it, he just stormed in without waiting for me to say anything, and I immediately knew he was on edge.at first. I thought he was coming to start an argument and was ready to call the cops to have him removed from my property. But to my surprise, he started crying again this time for real, not for show like last time. I dropped everything and tried to comfort him. After all, I'm human too. I'm not the kind of person who stands by while someone cries and does nothing. Even if it had been Fiona, I would have done the same. After a while, he calmed down and explained that he had taken a day off and spent the whole day at home depressed about the divorce. Fiona came into his room to comfort him, but instead started flirting with him. She had never done that before. He tried to push her away, saying he wasn't in the mood for jokes, but she tried to get close to him. That's when he set boundaries. He realized I had been right about her all along. Even though he had always seen her strictly as a friend, or even like a sister, she had been trying to make a move on him all this time. They had a huge fight, and Fiona accused him of leading her on all these years, then marrying me, called him a traitor, packed her things, and moved back with her parents, and now he came to apologize to me and admit that I was right about everything. He said he regretted taking me for granted and recognized that he didn't deserve a woman like me, and maybe this divorce would finally help him get his life together. We talked a little and clarified things. I realized he wasn't lying when he said he loved only me and saw Fiona as a sister. It still wasn't enough for me to go back to him, but at least I feel much better about my decision. We're still divorcing, but we'll try to finish things on good terms. I really hope we manage that.